Hey guys, my name is Anna. I wanted to tell you about my ex-best friend, Molly. Our friendship was ruined by her persistent love of teaching me how I should or shouldn't live my life. As a rule, the awfulness of her advice would manifest in small things, but one time, everything was totally different and very serious. At one point, it was even a question of life or death. But first things first, Molly always loved to give advice. Stupid advice, really. But I used to believe that she wanted the best for me, and even further, that she would get angry with me if I argued with her. So I followed her guidance. She was happy to tell me how I should behave, even in the most basic situations. Even though I usually had to deal with pretty unpleasant consequences. For example, once I needed to buy a dress for another school dance. Of course, I took Molly with me to the mall. After a few hours of shopping, I'd finally chosen the perfect blue medium-length dress. However, Molly didn't like it. She insisted I try on the dress that she picked out, which was yellow and way too tight for me. She persuaded me that I looked better in it, so I bought it. I couldn't even breathe properly in that dress, and at some point while I was dancing, I moved the wrong way and my dress ripped at the seams. Of course, I had to immediately leave the dance party, but not before a few people around me noticed what had happened. Long after that evening, my classmates were still making fun of me for it. And once, when Molly and I were at summer camp, I discovered a few nasty pimples on my face right before our group photo day. Molly said that she had the perfect recipe for a night mask that would inevitably clear up my skin. I was desperate, and I had no other choice but to follow her advice. Again. When I woke up, I rushed to the mirror, and for a second, I wished I was still sleeping. My whole face was orange. The pimples were gone, though. Molly said this was probably because the contents in the turmeric facial mask she made. Oh my gosh, the things I did to try to get rid of that face color back then. But nothing worked. I even got the nickname Anna, the orange banana, and everybody at the camp was laughing at me when I passed by. Nevertheless, I continued to be friends with Molly, and in this instance, it was especially important that I knew that whatever I told her, she'd keep a secret. This happened when I figured out that something had changed inside me. I'd begun feeling nauseated and sleepy all the time, and I couldn't drink my ordinarily favorite coffee because of its smell. Back then, I had been dating Evan McAllen for slightly more than a month. He was sort of my first love. When I found out that I was pregnant, I got really scared. And of course, Molly was the first one I told. That time, I really needed some serious advice and definitely couldn't stand any of her stupid consequences like before. I was devastated, but Molly seemed to be stubborn. She thought that Evan should be informed about what had happened since he was equally responsible for the trouble I was now in, so to speak. But I didn't want him to know. You see, we were about to graduate from school in a month or so, and he was about to leave for college soon. We were going to live in different parts of the country, and we were hardly going to keep dating anyway. Besides, I still hadn't decided whether I was going to keep the baby or not. So I didn't want Evan to remember me as that girl who ruined his life and stuff. But Molly kept insisting on her opinion on the issue, and finally I got really irritated with it. So at some point, I told her to keep her nose out of it. And I told her how bad the pieces of advice she'd given me in the past had always been. I didn't mean to fight with her, but apparently my words were really offensive. So she just left me alone. And this time, I had to make my own decision without the opinion of my bestie. I was really scared to tell my mom about what was going on, but she literally was the only one who was able to help me at that moment. I felt so miserable when she said that she was very disappointed in me. I lied to her and told her that I didn't know who the father of the baby was, and she began yelling at me for that even harder. I cried really hard all night long, so much so that in the morning I could barely open my eyes that were swollen with tears. Finally, My mom told me that I had no option but to give birth to the baby and that she'll help me raise him or her. I felt more secure because I no longer had to make that decision, but at the same time, I felt even more devastated than before. I knew I was no longer going to go to college or hang out with my friends or do anything else that girls who are my age usually do. And one day I was, as usual, sitting at home doing nothing and feeling sorry for myself when somebody knocked on my door. It was Evan with his parents. It turned out that Molly didn't listen to what I had told her about backing off my pregnancy, and she went and told everything to Evan. He, in turn, shared his problem with his parents. Oh, you can't even begin to imagine how big the scandal was that happened at my house back then. Evan's parents didn't want to believe that I was having his baby. They said they wouldn't provide any support until I had documented proof, like a DNA test or something. And my mom was trying to protect me, as they say, like a lioness, saying that she won't allow me to do any extra tests. I was crying, and Evan was trying to calm everybody down. It was stressful and totally awful. That fight didn't last for long, though. I was the one who ended it because I felt something strange and painful below my waist. I got really scared and almost fainted. Then the fuss began. Evan's parents took me and my mom to the hospital because we didn't have our own car. And for some strange reason, everybody just forgot that we could have called an ambulance. As you might have guessed, the stress that I was going through was manifesting physically as well as mentally. And as my fate would have it, I lost the baby. But the doctors promise that I will still be able to have as many children as I want to when I'm ready. Of course, Evan and I no longer dated, and I decided it would be better for me to just skip the last few days of school and the prom. And Molly, she apologized for what she had done, and I actually forgave her. But we could no longer be friends. Even though it has already been almost 6 months since my story happened, I still feel an emptiness inside. I hope you can understand why. I know I will be okay, and I still believe that anything that happens for the best. Do you? Share your opinion in the comments below, and then go and click that subscribe to the channel button.